So you've been out filming B-roll. Good job, because you can never have enough B-roll. And then you get back into the studio, get it all loaded up, and you find out that your handheld shots weren't quite as steady as you hoped they were. Happens a lot. So when you're shooting handheld, there's a lot to read on the camera to and with your body to make sure that your shot's as steady as possible. You can use the lens steady shot stabilization, which is what my lens has. I'm using the FX30 with the ZV-E10 kit lens. It's 16 to 50 with stabilization in the lens. So I had that on for these shots that we're going to be looking at soon. The FX30 itself has inbuilt stabilization, active stabilization, and that I was not using because that makes these tools that we're about to try in Resolve sometimes not work quite so well. Optical steady shot, great. Electronic stabilization, not so much. So if your shots are not already electronically stabilized, we can basically electronically stabilize them in Resolve. So let's take a look at that. So here we have a couple of shots that I did with the camera earlier today. So the first shot, let's take a look at it here. You can see that the movement is pretty erratic. I was not trying to hold it stable. In fact, I was doing some weird things with my hand while moving the camera. Not jerky, but not natural. So, because I wanted to see how well the stabilization dealt with it. The second shot here, let me get rid of these. There we go. The second shot here, I was holding it more stable, but I wasn't being really super careful about it. So here's the second shot. It's not quite as erratic, but it's not smooth. And the third shot, we have a combination of things going on here. One, I'm zoomed in, which exaggerates any motion of the camera. And two, it's windy. So the elements within the frame are moving around more than they normally would. Hard to get a shot that looks steady in those conditions. In the first clip here, we'll go down to stabilization in the inspector, open that up, and you see there's a stabilize button and some options. When I'm editing, I normally just punch the stabilize button without changing the settings because I want to see how it works. And it usually doesn't take long if it's a short clip. It'll analyze it, it'll pop in a little bit, and it gives it more room to move the image. And then let's have a look at the results. All right, not bad, better, but not great. And in my mind, not really usable. Let's watch it again in full screen. And what I'm looking for is how the flower, which is the main part of the shot, is moving relative to the background. If the background is kind of jerky behind the flower, I know that the stabilization isn't really doing what I need it to do. It's my fault for not having done it properly the first time with the camera, but the stabilization isn't helping the way I need it to. So let's go ahead and I'm going to undo the stabilization, and then I'm going to turn the cropping ratio up, and that lets the stabilizing zoom in further to give itself more room to move the image automatically. Then I'm going to up the smooth dial, which I'm assuming means it's trying to make the motion more smooth. And I'm not going to touch these modes at all. I'm just going to leave it on perspective. There are a couple others, similarity and translation. Play with those. Depending on the composition of the shot, those will stabilize things different ways. With a complex background like this, I've found that perspective tends to give me the best results. All right, let's go ahead and analyze that again. And have a look. You can already see that it zoomed in further. Now that is definitely a much more usable shot, given that it was not shot at all. With the intention that it be usable. All right, let's move on to the next one. This one should be a little bit easier. So here it is with nothing on it. This is a kind of classic handheld shot that, to my eye, looks like I'm trying to hold it steady. And on the little screen of my camera, I thought I was, but I wasn't. The motion's not smooth. Again, you can tell by looking at how the background moves relative to the flower. All kinds of things in there that tell your mind and your eye that this is not stable. So let's just go ahead and hit the stabilize button without changing any of the settings and see what it does. My guess is this is going to work fairly well. We'll zoom in again. subtle. Let's go ahead and add the other. We'll zoom in a little bit more, smooth a little bit more, hit stabilize again. Notice that since I didn't undo and I hit stabilize, it didn't have to reanalyze it because I haven't actually changed the clip. It just used the analytical data it did before to apply the new stabilization. Let's have a look. That is much smoother. Okay. We're going to go to the next one then. And this is a zoomed in shot. I wasn't moving. I was trying to hold it pretty still, but I was farther away than I really should have been, and I had zoomed in with the lens. So let's have a look at that. Oh, I cut off some of the end here. Let's put that back on. Yeah, you can see that kind of, and then the wind kicks in. Okay. So I'm going to take the wind back out because there's no stabilization is going to be able to do much with that. And let's go ahead and hit the stabilize button with no changes and see what that does. Pops in a little bit, and so here we're getting into the kind of compound problem of the camera moving and then the elements in the frame moving as well. I want this shot to be relaxing, magic, soothing, and it's just not going to be. There's too much movement going on, even though it's not like big movements or chaotic movements. It's just too much movement going on for this to be a soothing shot. Fortunately, if you look over here in our media pool, you can see that all of these shots were shot in 60 frames per second. So that means that in addition to stabilizing, we can go to speed change and turn this from 100% speed to 50% speed, and basically stretch those 60 frames per second out to 2 seconds, leaving us with 30 frames each second playing at half speed. That gives us a natural slow motion and a natural reduced motion of the camera. It's free steady shot as well as free slow motion. So let's look at that without stabilization. So you can see everything is moving more slowly, but you can still see the camera kind of drifting now. Let's go ahead and reapply stabilization. So it's now both stabilized and half speed. And there we have a magical, smooth, relaxing B-roll shot. That right there is why I routinely just leave my camera set at 60 frames per second and just film everything that way. If I'm filming B-roll, I double check to make sure it's 60 frames per second, and that's my default setting. I will turn it down to 30 frames if I'm shooting an interview, because you're highly unlikely to want to slow down an interview, and you don't usually shoot an interview handheld. But there are times that I've slowed down the footage during an interview, and that's when somebody finished a thought that was like a poignant moment, and they had a facial expression that didn't last very long, and then they went on to something else, or I, as the interviewer, broke in too quickly and went on to the next subject. So I had only this much footage, and I wanted that much reaction. That I will then take that final moment and spread it out if I've shot at 60. Now there's other ways of slowing down time that Resolve can do that are pretty amazing, but we're not going to get into that right now. I wanted to show you one more thing. Let's take this as an example. This shot, let's zoom in a bit. Let's say I want it to be a little bit longer. So I'm going to take the end and spread it out until I've lost, I don't have any more there. You will see, there it is. You see that little jump? Where it used to end, it will do that little jump right there. And that's because that bit of the clip that we extended out hasn't been analyzed and stabilized. However, if you go to the Stabilize tab here, the option is still gray. That clip has stabilization applied to it, but since I've changed the clip, that part of the clip does not have stabilization applied, and currently, Resolve does not automatically notice that. So what you have to do is use the undo button here to reset everything, and then restabilize the whole clip. Fortunately, when you're dealing with short clips, it doesn't take that long. That's just something to watch out for when you're using stabilization inside Resolve. Thanks for coming along. It's been a quick look at ways you can kind of get your footage back or use a shot that you didn't think was usable. Again, always better to get it right in the camera the first time. But as we all know, that's not always possible. See you next time.